Hello and welcome back to All for United. It's Ben here with another weekend review. We dissect United's game from the weekend and talk about everything else that happened in the Premier League in a weekend full of action, but most of the action happened at Old Trafford, and that is where we'll start. We're joined by a special guest on the weekend review today, so let's get into it. Click subscribe to get daily Manchester United content from passionate Reds, only on All for United. Welcome back to All for United. Hit a like on this video, hit subscribe. I'm here with a weekend review. I felt like I said everything I needed to say last night, but I'm still struggling to find words, and I struggled last night as well. But one person who doesn't struggle to find words is Graeme Bailey, sports writer, transfer correspondent. You would have heard him on Sirius. You would have seen him on 90-Minute Football. Graeme, thank you first of all for jumping in, mate. We've done a couple of shows together now, and thank you for coming on. It's always good to hear from someone who isn't necessarily, I suppose, wrapped up in the passion, wrapped up in the moment, so to speak, as I think a lot of us United fans are right now. So let you take the floor at this point. And let's start with Manchester United against Liverpool. I don't even know if I can say the scoreline again, so I'll let you do that. That first half, has it ever been that bad in the Premier League?
Good afternoon, Ben. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure it isn't for many of you. Yeah, 5-0 Liverpool. And the concerning thing, obviously, is it didn't flatter Liverpool. The concerning thing is it wasn't even Liverpool's best team. He started this game with James Milner in midfield, which I think highlights where Liverpool know where United are. It wasn't a lack of respect, but, you won't see James Milner starting against Chelsea or Manchester City when Liverpool are playing. Yeah, it was a strange one, wasn't it? It surely wasn't going to get any worse than Leicester. They'd been not took to cleaners by Leicester, but they'd been given a good footballing lesson almost by Brendan Rodgers, how to attack United. And from a United point of view, I think it's desperately disappointing that Ollie didn't learn from that. To see Fred and McTominay in there again, I know Pogba was on the bench, etc., but Paul Pogba, for me, this is the issue here. You've got a world-class midfielder, and he is. We're not going to argue about that. He's a world-class midfielder. For me, I would love to see Paul Pogba. I said this on Sirius earlier in the week. He could play that quarterback role. He could play that role almost sat in front of a defence. He can do he could almost be a blocker. Yes, we know he can do the good things. Almost like a Petit and Vieira, where, you know what? They could play higher up the field. They could do that. But you could have sat him there, even done better than McTominay and Fred. And that fifth goal where we know Pogba gave the ball away, but that all came from the calamitous McTominay and Fred. What are they trying to play heads and volleys with him in the centre circle? What are they doing there? It's ridiculous. And, the players, I think what some United fans don't get is the fact that United players like Ollie. We know that. But the problem is, and this first emerged when he sold Romelu Lukaku, he lost a lot of respect in the dressing room then. And that's continued, where I think Paul Pogba likes Ole as a person. He'd like to go out for a meal with him. He just doesn't want him to manage him. And we can see why.
Yeah, I mean, can I just quickly hit on Graeme as well? I don't know if you want to hit on this a little bit, but you broke some news, and I don't know if you've done this before or after, about PSG and Pogba starting to tighten up a little bit. And when Pogba came on, he looked like a frustrated man, didn't he? I mean, it was a reckless challenge. It was definitely a red card. For you, does so to speak, Pogba resonate now a core base of that United team? Are the players getting frustrated under Ollie, do you think? Has he lost that dressing room, or is he even starting to lose that dressing room?
That's the thing, Ben. You can't say he's lost him, because they do like him. I think they respect him too much to say anything about it. But you can see Rashford and Greenwood. And I have this argument as well, that Rashford has not improved in the slightest since Ole Gunnar Solskjaer taken over, other than natural progression. Mason Greenwood, if I was managing United, Mason Greenwood would progress as he is, because he's a world-class talent. Mason Greenwood would make it as an England national without any coaching from anyone, because he's that good. But he's not improving. You got to take that next level. Sometimes these players do need that help, and you're not getting it from Ollie. And I think that, the players do cut a frustrated figure. They're not, and I've said this all since it's not being clever in hindsight. As I said, Ben, I've been on the show before. I come at this from the fact that I believe Manchester United are the biggest club in the world. So anything but being title challenges, is not good enough. And this United team, and the main factor, you've got this talent pool now. Ed Woodward, I'm not going to get in this Ed Woodward argument. I did tweet about it, but United have improved thanks to Ed Woodward over the last 12 months, not Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It's Ed Woodward signing Rafael Varane, signing Cristiano Ronaldo, signing Jadon Sancho. That squad is better because of Ed Woodward, not Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
Devil's advocate, the 4 years before this last maybe year, 2 years, when the transfer identity changed, Woodward obviously came out with a Galacticos comment. He tried that way. He tried the different managers. Again, devil advocate here, Graeme. I can only interview you, so to speak, in this moment right now. But you, so to speak, can't make up with 4 years of mistakes with then your swan song year, your final year, and turn around and go, oh, that's all down to Woodward. I mean, the change in direction, is that something natural that comes within the club as well? Maybe not down to Ollie, but also potentially not down solely to Woodward.
Well, you've got David De Gea there in place, arguably the best goalkeeper in the Premier League so far this season. He's recaptured his form. That was in that period. You've got others as well, who Fernandes before that maybe. It's all very well fans chanting and stuff like that. The main issue at Manchester United is not the owners. It's not the chief executive. The one thing stopping you from challenging for honours, if you think it's Ed Woodward, fair enough. You're mistaken, but fair enough. That's your opinion. And I thought the biggest game recently to highlight the discrepancy in the ability of your manager was Villarreal, a team full of, I'm not going to disrespect them, but Etienne Capoue, etc., full of ex-championship players, barely Premier League players, and they're out. And what was the one big difference there in that game? The managers, Unai Emery and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And I think it is, and fair enough. And now, fair enough to the owners, the Glazers, they're sticking by. They're doing what the fans wanted. They're sticking by Ollie through thick and thin. Last week, as I reported on 90 Minutes, Solskjaer had their utmost confidence as of last week. And as you said, he's not going anywhere this week unless there's a massive change in the Glazers' stance today, which you can't rule out. Anything can happen in football, but as it stands, he's staying put. And actually, someone on the source did tell me today, and you'll see us on 90 Minutes later, that the board always thought that the Spurs game would be the bigger barometer of where United are, and almost they expected to get beat off Liverpool. I don't think any of us really expected. On the pre-match podcast, I did say 3-0. And my colleague Craig did as well. I think that was probably the ballpark figure that a lot of us thought. Ben, I think a lot of us thought that was coming at a 3-0 defeat maybe, but 5-0 with the game after 50 minutes. It sounds stupid. They could have put a Chelsea Norwich score if they wanted to. That could have been 7-8. Could have been anything they wanted, because you saw Manny come. You saw them being ball greedy. It was really a school bully beating down on the other kid. Because they weren't passing the ball. It was like, it's like when we were all growing up playing football, when the score line's at 5-0, you're all taking the shots on, stop passing. It was like that. It was absolutely embarrassing. And at some point there has to be a bit of respect. Saying, no, he knows himself. He knows he's not good enough. This is a man who was terrible at Cardiff. He didn't pull up any trees. It's ridiculous that he's in situ now. If he was at any of the other world-class clubs, Barcelona, Real Madrid, to Barcelona side because they're trying to get Xavi to replace Koeman, so they know what they want, and they've gone through the off-field stuff. If it wasn't for the support of Gary Neville, who has the ear of a lot of people at Man United, he has the ear of the fans, if it wasn't for him, he'd be gone now. And United need to start acting like the biggest club in the world, what they are, and they need to get rid of him. It's holding them back massively now.
Can I ask you some questions? Can I ask you some questions, Graeme, off the back of what you've just said? Just because I want to pick into your, you do put your ear close to the ground, and you do have some really good sources, even at times we've spoken privately, and you've got things spot on. Just quickly, so a source has said to you, so this was before the Liverpool game, that they felt like the Spurs game would be the better barometer to see where Ollie's at, to see where Ollie's United is at. So for you,
I've been told that today, Ben.
Oh, you've been told that today. Okay. One thing that I do want to do is caveat this video slightly. We're live now at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in the UK. We know that any decision that gets made will obviously run through the Glazers. They're currently fast asleep in bed in Florida. So whether a decision has been made now or not, or whatever's going on there, you know, ultimately we don't expect anything to happen right now or within the next couple of hours. But things could change quickly, couldn't they, Graeme? When obviously they start their day over in America and the stock exchange starts. Like, we know how this club works. We know how this board works. So things could change, but where you're at the moment, with your ears where they are, Ollie sees through to the Spurs game.
Yeah, I said this time last week that he had that utmost confidence. So, you know, they're doing the best to stick with him. They have to take it to January, really, judging where they are. I think it helps him that there isn't that many people out there to replace him. There is, you know, if you're looking, there is the likes of Conte, where I know Conte's people are pushing him towards that, but you know, the way Gary Neville was speaking yesterday, you know, that is really the stance at United, where you're probably looking at another Mourinho type of character. You know, he's going to want to play different football. It won't help. I think it's different when you got like Zidane, is Pochettino available again? But as it stands, yeah, I think the Spurs game is really interesting, you know, because I think, and it's depressing that United accept that they're not on Liverpool, Chelsea, and Man City's level. They're thinking more Tottenham, which again sums up the current situation. It's almost a malaise, but you know, the confidence they had in the summer from making those big 3 signings, and it's just pitiful. But yeah, the Spurs game this weekend. It's a huge game. It is, and it's not. I don't think it's necessarily the result, Ben, because, and I think that's the situation here with the results we've seen, the defeat to Villa, etc., the draw with Everton, and the performances against Villarreal and Atalanta. It is the performances we're talking about. The performances are horrific. It's not about the results, really. Now
They are.
It's the performances are terrible.
That's the thing for me, Graeme, right? That's the thing for me, is you spoke about this a year ago and its standards as Manchester United Football Club. And you can be on any run of form that you like. I mean, ultimately, when you're on a bad run of form, of course, you have a look at a trajectory. And if everything's going bad and not working out and lessons aren't being learned, you look like you can visibly see. You don't need a stat to tell you that United look like they're on a downhill trajectory. It's how long you let that tumble on for now. And ultimately, I'm with you in what you say. After that Liverpool game, it's and people are using the word, I agree with it. You're untenable after that Liverpool game in so many different ways. You can't perform like that and not react. And United were gone after the second goal. Like, United were completely gone after I'd even say the first goal. Even the way we defended after that first goal.
Oh, yeah,
anyone in their right mind would be switching up the formation and closing up shop for at least the next 10 minutes, because you know that your heads are going to go down from that point. There was no reaction. No reaction at all.
You look at what Chelsea did recently, where they suffered. They lost to Man City closely. They weren't outplayed, but Tuchel made sure, right, we are not losing these next 2 games. And Chelsea should be, for Ollie, if I was Ollie, I'd be looking at Chelsea and see how they play. You don't need to play a pressing game. Not every team in the world can do what Liverpool and City do. And I think he's thinking that United need to play this way. United are a counter-attacking team. They were always a counter-attacking team. It's in their DNA since Fergie. United are a counter-attacking team. This team could be, but even I agree with Jamie Carragher to this extent, where even when the word dropping in, and Gary Neville said this as well, he looked at the tactical analysis of Leicester. When the word dropping into shape, they looked clueless even when they were dropping back into their shape. Yesterday, Fred and McTominay should have been sat in front of the 2 centre-halves. He should have sent them out there saying, right, we are not conceding a goal until half-time. If that means you 6 sit there and let them try and play through you. If they play through all 6 of you, fine. But the way they were getting dragged, it was ridiculous. It was like a cup tie. It was like a cup tie, Ben, where you were 2-0 down after the first leg and trying to go for it. It was absolutely ridiculous. And if he can't find... If Ole Gunnar Solskjaer cannot find a room for Paul Pogba in that team, that just shows you how clueless he is. You got Fred and McTominay. Sit 1. You don't need to sit 2 unless you're Gareth Southgate. Fine, you don't need to sit 2 players every game. But even then, he has 2 sitters who are doing their jobs. You got 2 sitters there, McTominay and Fred, who I think one of them could sit there in a decent role, but be the quarter, like spread it around. Let the forwards push up field.
Here you go. There's the example of what you're saying in terms of where Fred and McTominay are on the pitch there. and what they're doing and what they're not doing. And then you've got Rashford and Ronaldo in no man's land. You've got Greenwood in no man's land. You've got Bruno out on the left wing. Like these defensive midfielders here at 2-0 down need to be a heck of a lot tighter.
Well,
a heck of a lot tighter.
I'd have done Ben. Why couldn't you have got Fred or one of them? Why couldn't you man Mark Salah? When you know Mane is not, when you know you got a team.
Herrera used to do it all the time. When we went on that run with Ollie, it was because of that.
So Mane is not playing. Let's man Mark Salah. That's their two best players out the game, possibly. Yeah, fair enough. But put a bit of thinking into it. He's seen Mane not playing, and then he's let Naby Keita come in and dominate. And don't get me wrong, Naby Keita's on a good run of form, but it's the first one we've seen in 2 years from him. And the way they ran through, like obviously it does highlight why he signed Varane with Lindelof there, but and obviously, let's not talk about the fullback performances, Ben. You know, obviously, Aaron Wan-Bissaka confirmed, and he's probably not in England's top 10 right backs at the moment because he was dreadful. But that underlines why they're looking for a right back. Which
and also
spent,
on top of that,
spent
Luke
all
Shaw.
the money on him.
Luke Shaw, absolutely. There's no word in the dictionary to sum up how bad Luke Shaw was. And the issue is when you've got that level of incompetence. Also, looking at the performances, no one's talking about it. Lindelof was horrendous. Wan-Bissaka would go. Lindelof would lose his, quite literally, sorry for swearing, shit. Chase him. Literally chase him. Then Maguire would shift. Shaw would shift. No one was then coming back on the left-hand side. Fred and McTominay at top. It's so dysfunctional,
but the one thing was disappointing, and I'm not pointing, but Wan-Bissaka, where he went out at, he didn't break his balls to get back and get past Jota. No. He was jogging. And I think... But, you know, is he getting the rollicking off Ollie when he goes back in the changing room? Is Ollie, you know, and I think when we say lack of respect in dressing room, Ben, I don't think he's lost the dressing room because he's a nice guy and they like him. But I don't think he's lost dressing room because I don't think he's ever had it tactically. I don't think they've ever believed in his things. And I said this to you before with Paul Pogba, you know, Pogba gets accused of this and that. Paul Pogba's seeing what's coming. He's had a few weeks on training ground with Ollie and thought, you know, this is a man who's worked with Allegri, he's worked with Fergie. He's gone in there and thought, you know, do I need to play?
Is it an excuse to drop tools to that extent, Graeme? I mean, some of the performances we've seen at this club from Pogba under Ollie, some of the performances we're seeing now from individuals, I understand that you might have grievances under, again, playing devil's advocate, Graeme, you know, but that doesn't justify going out on that pitch and putting in the performance man for man. Although there might be a dysfunctional system, man for man, there's got to be some responsibility here on the players as well. Because that is the biggest game in your calendar that season. That is when you've got this, this badge on your chest and you're walking out Old Trafford against them. That is the one game that your effort needs to be that 110%. That is what you work your 1,000 or 10,000 hours for, is to deliver in games like that for the fans at that stadium, for the club, and for the history of said fixture. They're going out there, Ben,
not knowing what they're doing, and that makes them look a bit like. Look, if you didn't know Mason Greenwood was a homegrown United man, you'd have said he was a young foreign guy who doesn't know what the game's about. Nobody knows what the game's more about than Rashford and Greenwood, but they didn't know what they were doing. Greenwood there, do I close down? Do I back off? Do I get back in shape? Are we counter-attacking? Do we get alongside Cristiano? Does he want me out wide? They looked absolutely clueless.
Liverpool's second goal, that's avoidable without the mistake from Luke Shaw. I know that there's things that goes into it, but there was a massive mistake there from Luke Shaw. You could come back and you could say the same about the first goal for Leicester, Maguire's pass. You know, there's little things here as professional footballers, though, Graeme, where these players need to do better. And when they put the shirt on, they need to do better. And I said this last night, by the way, so I'm playing devil's advocate on myself here. You know, as a Manchester United fan, whether we love Ollie, whether you're a Mourinho fan, whether you're a Van Gaal fan, we always do come down to the point where we go, the players aren't good enough. But then at the start of the season, we're looking at that team and we're going, we should be challenging. You can't have a mixture of both. There has got to be some sort of fine line here between what a manager's fault is and the player's fault. But in games like that yesterday against Liverpool, the one thing that I would say is that when you get embarrassed like that, man for man, you do need to step up and take account as players as well. And I would go as far as to say that whether you're Ollie in or Ollie out, or whether you're neither and you just want best for the club, like I'm sat here now saying that I'm not in the Ollie out campaign, but I can say that you do not deserve to keep your job as manager of Manchester United Football Club on our current run, and a worrying performance like that Doesn't mean that I'm raising a banner and titling every show Ollie out or doing only shows about Ollie. The issue I've got is that this feels like more. That result yesterday feels bigger than just the manager. There needs to be a massive shift also in that changing room, because something also isn't right man for man there as well. And whether that's that we buy into a fairy tale at the start of the season, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, club legend, Ronaldo coming back, Bruno Fernandes, best midfielder in the world, as you say, Wan-Bissaka, best English. Do you know what I mean? Like, we fall in love here with a team that Ole's put together, and maybe we've bought too much into the fairy tale and the team actually isn't that great. I don't know. But I don't know. Yeah. Yesterday for me, Graeme, and the roundabout way I'm trying to say, it felt a little bit more than just a, hey, Ollie, you're shit at your job. You need to go. Conte's going to come in and fix everything. It just doesn't feel like that.
I think some United fans are starting to. I think the blinkers are coming off, because this is things some of us saw 12 months ago. It wasn't good enough then. It isn't good enough now, and and it is down to the manager. You've got a squad here that should be challenging for the title. You have got a squad. Yeah, you may need a right back in January. You may need a holding midfielder in January, but you still shouldn't be light years behind Liverpool, Chelsea, and City, which what you are. And this isn't about pressing. As I said, adopt the Chelsea system, adopt the Chelsea format. Where's it's just there's no consistent. It is consistently bad. That is the problem. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, can I just quickly butt in with some breaking news quickly?
Of course
Jamie Jackson at The Guardian, who I rate massively, I'm sure you know of Jamie. He's saying that a source has told him that the managing director, Richard Arnold, who's also set to replace Ed Woodward, by the way, as chief exec, is understood to have cancelled all appointments today and will hold talks with Joel Glazer this afternoon. Interesting.
I said, I think, as you said, I think he'll be confirmed. Ollie for me will still be in charge. It's not going to be this huge shock who is out there to replace him. It's a frustrating situation for Man United fans. But as I said, all Ollie has done, and his legacy, as I've said for over 12 months, is he has managed to lower expectation levels at United. You guys were bouncing up and down to finish second. A lot of fans were bouncing up and down to finish second. That is not good enough. You are the biggest club in the world. Sign these players. You should be, if you're not title challenging every year, you should be questioned. And what is he? He's over 3 years without a trophy now. But it's just this Ollie spell that he's got over the club at the minute is just mind-boggling to me, but I just don't get it. And I haven't got it for over, as you know, I haven't got it for over 12 months now. And it's just ridiculous. I just don't understand it at all. And do you know what? If you did bring one of these managers in, you would see a difference virtually overnight. You would. You're seeing a high caliber manager coming in, and it's not always this simple solution. Perhaps you wouldn't become title challengers, but you would see an immediate impact if you brought a world-class coach in. You would. Look at Lampard. Lampard got sacked for doing a lot. I didn't mind Chelsea when Lampard got sacked. I thought they would see roots of encouragement. They were getting there, and he got sacked because Tuchel was available. Chelsea knew they could do better with him,
and the timing was right. You look at now, the timing was right, and Lampard done the job that he needed to do. They didn't keep it going on too long. The timing was just about right to save the season and save Lampard's legacy as well. And that's also my concern here: is how long do you let it drag on for before this also affects Solskjaer and so to speak his idolism at United, the player that he is, and that is my concern here. He needs to get out of jail card, and it feels like he's never going to walk. Of course he won't. No manager will ever walk from a job. It's just not the way it's done. I do feel like a decision does need to be made sooner rather than later, but I also understand the logic or potential logic behind keeping him in for the Spurs game. I still think they'll keep him for Atalanta and City as well. There's a few factors you need to take into account here. Do you go into those games with Carrick and McKenna as your manager, more or less, on an interim basis? That's a risk in itself. The other risk right now is what other manager out there, and we'll talk to you about this in a minute, Graeme, but I'm just going to list off what's in my head. Do you bring in now? I mean, I don't get the same feeling about Conte being in. Zidane, definitely not for me. And then I look at other managers around. Pochettino, Did that sail? when they decided to give the job to Ollie now that we're seeing him at PSG? I don't know. Also, Ten Hag, is he really going to leave Ajax right now? I'm not sure about that being a thing that he'll do mid-season. So it's an interesting one to see where United go next. But before we talk about that, Graeme, I do want to just quickly on a couple of things that have already been said on the show. For anyone tuning in right now, hit a like, subscribe to the channel. Graeme Bailey's with me. Go give him a follow on Twitter. He's fantastic. And his ears always close to the ground. Graeme said to me that source told him today that it's more likely that Ollie will be in charge for Spurs, and that'll be the barometer of where United and Ollie are at. Also, though, the caveat to that is it's very early days today when it comes to Manchester United's working day. Offices in London, offices in America. The Glazers obviously based in America, so any decision that gets made this morning or by the board will not be potentially discussed until this afternoon or evening. So patience is a must. There are rumours starting to come out now that Richard Arnold is going to be holding a chat with the Glazers later today. But as Graeme says, after something that happened like yesterday, probably fairly standard. However, he and the rest of the board did come out and say last week that they are backing Ollie. And for that to change now, again, will be a big shift. So we have to wait and see and be patient on this one. Obviously, there's caveats to every single report that's out there. And one of the ones that I do want to hit on, let me go to some comments first, actually, Graeme. Sorry. I just want to go over. Colin, I was reacting to something that you said earlier on, how we have fallen that a loss to Liverpool was expected, as you said on the prediction shows. FC United forever said Woodward doesn't sign anyone, hasn't done in well over a year. That's a fact. Well, maybe shifting over to Richard Arnold, but I think the premises of what Graeme was saying was that this shift has come from somewhere, and ultimately it would come from the very top, not Ollie. It would come from Woodward, and that's where the policy has sort of changed. So, Stuart says that the Glazers not in the UAE buying an IPL franchise. I don't think they are actually in attendance. I think they've got representatives out there. I'm not sure. Could you imagine Joel Glazer stood there with a card going, I'll have that one, please? Come on. He doesn't know what's going on out there. Come on, Stu. He doesn't even know how football works, does he? Didn't he famously ask about the offside rule once at a game? Hello to Anthony. It's not good when you're not looking forward to the next game. Munsey's jumped in saying, wait until Sunday to sack him as it's my birthday. Let's hope. I mean, ultimately, Munsey, I've got to say, I respect your comment. Thank you for jumping in. It's not going to be a nice day when Ollie's sacked. I'm not looking forward to it. I mean, it might need to be done for the good of the club. You don't like to see your club sacking managers, do you?
I've been there myself, Ben. We had Tony Mowbray at my own Middlesbrough, who was, he led us a homegrown player, bigger legend from Middlesbrough than Southside United in many ways. He's a homegrown lad, legend, came back, took his manager, and so it is tough. It is tough when these things happen, but you got to separate from playing and managing, don't you? As Chelsea did, and look at Chelsea now.
Yeah, Akil says stubbornness and lack of experience recipe for disaster. Ollie's obsession with his favourites and sticking with some mediocre coaching staff will cost him his job. And let's have a look at one thing here. Let me just quickly flick through. There's another comment that I wanted to bring up. Again, Connor just jumped in here, just chatting. What happens if we beat Spurs, beat Atalanta and lose to City? Wouldn't be good enough. Ollie needs straight wins, really. Again, it's interesting. Who knows? We can't get our minds into the board. But let me hit on there. A comment there, Graeme, just spoke about inexperience. So what do United do now? We've gone through this whole thing where we've employed a lot of young coaches in the back room. We've brought in new scouts. We've changed the way that the club is behind the scenes. We've invested a lot as well during Ollie's time in young talent in the academy ranks who are yet to come through to under-23s, but very young talents. Conte, Zidane, all come with their own coaching staff, all come with their own way of doing things. We've recently put Murto and Fletcher in sporting director roles and bits and pieces like that. So the lead for a new manager, Conte, is he a fit? We've seen some rumours come out now about the fact that he wants a job, apparently. United apparently could open talks with him. Where are those rumours coming from, do you think? Is that Conte's side pushing it more than United are right now? What are you thinking about these rumours?
Yeah, I spoke to someone close to Conte today, actually, and they're putting it forward. They're making sure that United know that he would like the job, that he's in there. Obviously, there will be caveats, as you say, Ben, with everything in football, and he would like to do it his way. I think if United want that short-term fix, as in if they want to be challenging in the next 2 years to the Premier League, then Conte would be a good fix for that. He would be a good signing for them in that regard. And in some ways, I don't think it'd be a bad appointment. How much more building can you do? Solskjaer's been doing this for over 3 years now. Fair enough, he is a terrible builder, and that is the reason why you're going so slowly. But Conte comes in, does he turn this team into title challengers? Quite possibly, without making a single signing. Antonio Conte could turn this team, this 1-11, your best 1-11, into title challenges. He could. He really, really could. This was a guy who turned Victor Moses into a top class right wing back at one point. You know, he can do things with certain players. Zidane, you're quite dismissive of him, Ben. I wouldn't be so dismissive. You know, one of the best managers we've seen in recent history, anywhere in the world, for him to do what he did at Real Madrid. He can handle a big team, experience. He's got a class. Look at the way he walks away. You know, I think Ollie could take a leaf out of Zidane's book for the class in which he walked away from that job. He knew his time was up, and he walked away. So I think Ollie could take a lot of a leaf from Zidane's book in that regard. And I still come back to Pochettino. You know, that will be, I imagine, if in Woodward's biography, which obviously you'll be an avid reader of, Ben, in the years to come, not getting Pochettino will be something they look back on with regret. He was perfect for this United job, and I still don't think he would be unattainable. Maybe in January, you know, PSG. I never thought he was a good fit for PSG. I always thought he was a perfect fit for United, bringing through young players, improving the current staff. And is that really the job that PSG want him to do? Probably not. So I would think he's a better fit for United than PSG. So I wouldn't really rule Pochettino out just yet. But, you know, there are a few options for them to replace Ole now and in a few weeks before Christmas. But I think they'll want at least to get to January, Ben. I do. I think they'll want to wait until then. But whether they can or not, you know, the way it's going, it's tough. As one of the listeners said, do you beat Tottenham, beat Atalanta, beat Watford? You know, games that you probably should be winning. He might win, and that might give him another month or so.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, on the flip side, though, Graeme, I mean, you mentioned a little bit about Liverpool there, and this is what really struck me with that performance from us the other day. It just brought back the early days of Sir Alex Ferguson. We're going to knock them off their perch. It sort of feels like whatever happens next, United again, despite the hard work that's gone in, the position that the club got in to knock Liverpool off their perch and somewhat, sort of feels like that's a rebuilding job to do that again. This Liverpool side looks serious this season, don't they, Graeme? It's a weekend review, so let's talk slightly about them. And also, what about Chelsea and City for you after their performances this weekend?
Yeah, I think it was just another weekend. There is a gap in the Premier League now between the top three. Liverpool, I always thought last year, you know, they lost a lot of players. Gomez and Van Dijk had ripped the heart out of that. You know, look at Varane out at United, but Lindelof and Maguire, I could be your first choice for Varane gets really settled. But yeah, it's Liverpool were really impressive, and let's not forget they had Sadio Mane on the bench. Fabinho wasn't playing, so they could argue there were two or three players short of their best team, which is frightening for Man United looking at that. And Man United, Chelsea, yeah, spectacular look. They did that without Kai Havertz creating or scoring a goal. They probably could have been more. City were sublime, really were. And my word, I think if you offered United fans now 4-0 loss to City, it's that bad, you'd take it.
City, do you know what? I was sat there watching the Liverpool game, and I was thinking, if this is 7-0, I'm putting over, because I had to listen to the end of the game on
City without being stupid and without cracking a smile. City could put double figures on this United team. If Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is in charge, they could put double figures on you.
Yeah, it's scary, by the way, to think that between Liverpool, Chelsea, and City, they scored 16 goals. 16
and it's
goals.
Where the Premier League is, Ben. The fact you're closer to Arsenal in every aspect of your in terms of manager, team performance, you are closer to Arsenal, and City should be sending shockwaves through the Glazers' boardroom now. Arsenal.
What did you make of Arsenal, by the way? You mentioned Arsenal. What have you made of Arsenal? Has Arteta turned it around there, or is this just what they are now? They're going to go bump to bump to bump.
I think they had an awful summer. I think the transfer business they did was shocking, apart from Odegaard, and they had Smith Rowe anyway. So it gets to a point like at Man United where if you buy good enough players, you will improve. Arteta's not the long-term solution at Arsenal. Clearly not. He's not good enough. They've turned in some horrific performances this season. They should have lost to Crystal Palace last week. Yeah, they're going to get the odd win. It's like United, you are going to beat some teams because if you have that caliber of player, it's impossible not to win some games. You know, it just is what it is. I think United are so lucky the way Arsenal and Tottenham have gone. I think they need to be worried by Leicester coming along now. I think they're Brendan Rodgers. It's a shame from United's point of view that you can't appoint Brendan Rodgers. He admitted himself that was one of his hesitancies about taking the Liverpool job. If you look back to our quotes from Brendan Rodgers saying he knew by taking the Liverpool job that would stop him from ever getting the United job, and that is not a regret of his. It's something he looks back on and thinks, But he'll be taking over. He'll get a big job anyway. Rodgers for me is the best young British manager around anyway. But the job he's doing at Leicester is absolutely fabulous. I love watching Leicester play. I love what Brendan Rodgers has done, and I think they're going to come as well. I think United now, and the way West Ham are playing, as a United fan, Ben, I'm not sure what you think. I think you'll be looking at, if it carries on like it is, obviously it's not being Nostradamus, you'll be looking to finish top 6. But is that unjust? No, not at all. You don't deserve to finish top 6.
Especially not when you see the way that Leicester obviously got the win, like you mentioned there, against Brentford, and the way that they can turn it on.
Well, look, and the calibre of squad they got, Ben, where Daka and Samad, they're bringing them in gradually. And
how good is Daka, by the way? Daka looks brilliant.
Lost Fofana, and Wesley Fofana for me is the best young defender in Europe. And to lose him, they lost a lot of things. So, but the way they're scouting, the way they're bringing these players in, let's hope United have learned a lesson. In terms of United's recruitment, it's these silly contracts they're giving out. The fact that Matic, Jones, they try to get rid of Bailly, Lindelof. They're offering these players everywhere, but the huge contracts they've got, their only hope is you might be able to get rid of a couple of them to Newcastle in January. They might be one of these clubs willing to take a hit on the shot.
But Woodward's done a good job, right, Graham?
Yeah, but.
Sorry, I had to poke a button there. I had to poke it.
But it has, yeah. Is your squad better now than it was 2 years ago? This is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Ed Woodward, who had to sell Lukaku because Ole Gunnar Solskjaer wanted him out. Was that a good move? Get rid of Lukaku?
I mean, on hindsight, this is the thing though, Graham. You move into it and go, okay, well, why was Lukaku unhappy, right? And if you read through the lines of why Lukaku was unhappy, he was unhappy before Ole came in towards the end of Mourinho's tenure.
But then Ole didn't,
and that sort of carried on. Then Ole had a problem with him because he thought Lukaku had an attitude problem. And then all of a sudden they love each other. Lukaku comes out and goes, Ole's great, Ole's this, Ole's that. Ole comes out going, Lukaku. You just don't ever know what's going on behind the scenes with these players. It's a bit like the Van der Beek situation now.
The Lukaku one had a major impact on Ben. The thing with Lukaku, it wasn't just about selling a guy who's guaranteed to score 20 goals. He was a major influence in the dressing room. And like I Pogba, Rashford, etc., that had a lasting effect on them in that dressing room.
Can I also say though, Graham, it's the hypocrisy in some ways of selling Lukaku, bringing in Ronaldo. One of the main reasons why you sell potentially a striker, like you say, guaranteed 25 goal season, etc. He's good, he can score. The only reason why you do that is because maybe he doesn't fit your system. He doesn't press enough. And that was what everyone was talking about, the work rate. So if you're going to mold a team around work rate and then go and sign Ronaldo 2 seasons later because no one's getting you the amount of goals you need, is worries about Cavani's fitness and there's no one to slot in, we've come full circle. And that's for me the worry. I do feel like United have come back round.
And I do think that's where Conte fits into this. You see, what player Conte turned Lukaku in? He turned Lukaku around. I didn't ever think Lukaku would get to the level he is now. And our hats off to Conte. He's done a wonderful job with him. Imagine the improvement he could get maybe from a Rashford and Greenwood. I think that has to be imperative in their thinking for next manager in. We have to get the best out of this young talent to be able to improve him. And as you say, there's only so many managers who can do that. But I think Pochettino, Sadad, Conte, even though they are big names, they can improve these players. So you need someone like that to do it.
I'll tell you one thing now, and it would be interesting to see, just knowing how Conte sets up, I don't think you see a Bruno Fernandes in a Conte team. So it'd be interesting to see how United go about this and what faith and how they. I think you get Pogba in it. I think you play Pogba next to someone else in the middle of the park, and Conte can get something great out. Probably plays. I mean, he tinkers with formations, doesn't he? He does like the 3 at the back, especially when he first goes into a club. And I think that's probably what United need right now for a bit of stability. But the issue is then also, he likes to play the 3. I think that suits Sancho to a T. I think Sancho would be brilliant in the 3
obviously, Lautaro Martinez blossomed next to Lukaku as well. So could that be a Rashford and Ronaldo thing? I think Conte
Rashford,
does.
Ronaldo, Sancho.
It does change slightly, but it's and that's the other thing. The Sancho thing is desperately disappointing and worrying. I hate to see the situation.
Can I make a point on Sancho, Graham, quickly before you finish on that as well? We say we go full circle about work rate and knowing how this team wants to play, and again, this is my biggest concern. Don't know how we want to play. If you actually watch Sancho at Dortmund, don't get me wrong, he's got a great work rate, but he was never used as a pressing forward in a system. He just wasn't. He was used more on the counter attack, and he's used more on the right hand side. You look at how Sancho's been used this season. How can we expect anything from Jadon Sancho? And that's my concern here again as well, is we've put so much effort into buying Sancho for Ollie, doesn't know how to use him.
Yeah, exactly.
Baffling.
And the thing that a lot of English-based fans don't realise, this is a guy, you weren't buying potential here. You were buying one of the top players in the Bundesliga. Top 3 players in the Bundesliga last year was probably Lewandowski, Haaland, and Sancho. He is the real deal. He's the finished article.
Yeah.
You're not buying potential. And for what Ollie is doing with Sancho at the moment, it's criminal. It really is.
Yeah.
Think Pulisic, but a much better player. He's a much better player than Pulisic.
I completely agree. I completely agree. Brown,
and a lot of people are letting him off because they haven't seen him so much, Ben. But he's a top-notch player. He really is.
I really agree with you there. No, and it's spot on analysis, to be fair, of him. And I'm with you on that one. I do watch quite a bit of German football, and just seeing him in that team. And again, you look at that, you see how Bellingham's expressing himself now. Blimey, like Brown Knight, agree with Ben about him and Ronaldo being basically same side forward, but Ronaldo's much better player than Lukaku. I'm not doubting that. I mean, ultimately, you can say what you want about these things. What I was more saying was the philosophy around signing these players, how you sign them, when you sign them, and then you know, the hypocrisy when you let them go or bring them in. That was more my thing. Hammer asked a question around the 3. Maybe we'll talk about that. If Conte was going to go over front 3, who would he play? I mean, they play a bit more like central strikers, don't they? In terms of
I think Rashford and Greenwood would love Conte.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Can I hit on one more thing? We've been talking obviously a lot about Ollie and managers, and obviously 2 clubs which have made the decision to let go of their managers, Newcastle and Watford. Newcastle, a place very, very close to your heart, Graeme. When I say close to your heart, probably couldn't be any further from your heart, but close to where you live. 1-1 draw against Vieira's tricky Palace, and of course Ranieri going straight in and getting a 5-2 win at Goodison against Everton, which has got to be as mind-blowing result from the weekend as United Liverpool. What did you make of those 2 games? And one quick stat that I want to put up: Watford's last 5 Premier League wins under 5 different managers. Bonkers.
That's a lovely stat. Yeah, Watford, remarkable. They were 1-0 down after 2 minutes. I must admit, they were on my coupon, and I couldn't see Watford win that game. But they're a very strange team, Watford. They have got some good players. Ismail Sarr's a top-class player. You can see why Liverpool are tracking him. And, you know, Watford are, if they're doing the best not to get relegated, they're doing a really good job. And you know, Watford are a team whose recruitment is very good. And that enables them to change the manager. The recruitment is exceptional. Look at the players they've got in that team. And you know, they are fantastic at doing that, and that's why they can take the manager in and out, because they work on a very European style. Newcastle obviously a very different animal altogether now, and an animal who I think United will soon be looking over their shoulders at, which is one reason United do need to get their fingers out, because there's another team about coming to the top 6 here, and it is Newcastle, and they won't be going anywhere anytime soon. They'll be fine. This manager hunt for them is a strange one. Paulo Fonseca, they've liked during interview. They've liked him a lot. Lucien Favre and Eddie Howe they've also talked to. I understand Frank Lampard was wanted by the Reuben brothers as part of that takeover team, but the rest weren't sure. And I think the fans, remember Newcastle fans had this thing with Dennis Wise and Tony Jimenez, Joe Kinnear, this Jordi Matthew under Mike Ashley. I think that would be a little bit of a worry for Lampard going there. You know, would they turn them? So I'm not sure he's in the reckoning anymore, from what I've been told from people close to him. He's waiting on that. So, Newcastle, very interesting. It's a strange one. As we talk about next manager out, Ollie cut to 1-5 this morning, Ben, to be next manager out. I'm not sure if he will be next manager out, but, you know, I think you struggle to get money on him to survive the season at the moment.
Well, if it's not him, though, who is it? Bielsa at Leeds, massively underperforming at the moment, struggling to put it together. 1-1 draw against Wolves, which, by the way, Wolves, to their credit, were starting to get into some form. What do you make of Bielsa's Leeds this season? And are they in a spot of bother here?
I think Leeds I think they've been horrific. They've been the biggest disappointment. I think what Norwich have been a huge disappointment to me in the way they've gone about the business. Ben, I think I don't think he's picking the right teams. I think they could have made not a good steal, but I think they could have made a better push for it, a better fight of it. But Leeds, you know, I always say this, Ben, in the summer, if you don't sign anyone, if you stand still in the Premier League, you're going backwards. They brought in Dan James very late on. They were looking at the likes of Lewis O'Brien. More midfielders didn't sign one. Then they were looking at forwards and didn't sign one, so they brought Dan James in. this Leeds team it's doing so little for me at the moment, and I do wonder where's the plan B. We saw this when Phillips wasn't playing at United. Leeds started off quite well in that game, but I think teams have learnt them out a little bit. And could you see Bielsa walking away from Leeds at some point if it's not going right? Possibly, but he's one of the highest paid managers in the league, Ben. So if you are one of the highest paid managers in the league, you should be performing better. So I think he is feeling the pressure now for the first time. Only time will tell the next few weeks how he copes with this. But I think people are asking the question a bit at the moment because, as with all Leeds United, it's not just about the results, Ben. The performances are way under par.
A couple of other managers with heat on them. Hasenhüttl, with his win last weekend, seems to have eased a bit of that pressure, but only a 2-2 draw against a tricky Dyche's Burnley. And of course, Nuno at Spurs, 1-0 away to West Ham, who are having a ridiculously good start to the season. Haven't they won 3 games in a week now, which is obviously really difficult for 4 games in a week. 4 games in 2 weeks, something like that anyway. Which is obviously incredibly tough to do and it shouldn't be ignored. What have you made of Spurs? What are you making of West Ham? And is Hasenhüttl safe there at the Saints?
Yeah, there's a bit of pressure. I like Hasenhüttl. I think he's doing a good job there. You've took players away. Losing Danny Ings was a massive thing for them. Adam Armstrong's come in, hasn't quite lived up to expectations there. And I think Hasenhüttl, they have to stick with him. He plays good football. They do well. I think a draw there, it wasn't what they wanted, but they didn't lose, which was a big thing for them. Burnley still without a win. I think the pressure's on them. Not on Dice, but they need to start getting the finger out as well. Although I think their performances haven't been too bad. It's a strange thing to say for a team without a win, but they've been battling. They've been in every game. So I sort of think they are getting there. And Nuno, I think United fans should be sending thank you cards. If it wasn't, they should be way above Man United in a way, but they're not. So it was strange how they've reacted. He's I like Nuno, and I don't know whether he's playing within it, playing his teams are playing within themselves. I know he was always a bit negative, but the way we used to see Traore and Jota supplying for Jimenez, I thought he was almost a good fit for Tottenham. A very good fit, not perfect, but a very good fit. But he doesn't seem to have his team playing that same manner. And maybe I think if he went back to basics, But yeah, if they're in a similar position come January, Ben, I think you're very right. You're very correct in the terms of looking at his situation. I think he's on a short leash, Nuno, anyway. So yeah, I wouldn't rule it out. And if a Conte or Zidane said we'll come in and take the job, well, he wouldn't have had the job in the first place if Conte had said yes. But if one of these big name managers fancies the Tottenham job, then yeah, he'll be out on his ear.
It's an interesting one because I also think that was a bit of a poison chalice for God, I've really struggled that word for Nuno. Anyway, when you're the 7th choice manager going in at a club, I mean, it can never spur confidence, can it? If you've got any questions for Graeme, get them in. I just want to react to some other breaking news this time from ESPN are putting some stuff out, Graeme. Apparently, they're now reporting that Solskjaer has lost the faith of a sizable number of the United squad even before Sunday's 5-0 defeat against Liverpool.
Yeah,
I mean, is that easy to write that? Or
it's the differentiation between the players like him as a mate. They do. The players do like him. It's like the United fan. It's very similar to the fan base, Ben. You're always going to like him, but do you respect him as a manager? Probably a lot less than what you did. And the players didn't. A lot of them didn't respect him anyway. So I think we have to differentiate. Just because we say someone likes Ole doesn't mean they respect him as a manager. And that's where the fans have got to realise there is a differentiation there between the two things. You can like him as a manager and you can like him as a person and not respect him as a manager. And that is the situation at United. But it has been that for a while. There's some players in that camp who have never really respected him. Paul Pogba, we know one of them. And now can we look back? Can we suggest Pogba is wrong in thinking that? I don't think we can.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, isn't it? It's really tough. When you look back in hindsight, you can put your finger on so many different buttons, can't you? And it's really difficult and it's really tricky. I said to you before this show, like when you actually look back, people would always mention when he did actually get the manager's role so prematurely. If he had got given, if the board had given himself 4 or 5 more weeks, saw then what happened at Spurs with Pochettino going, would Solskjaer have been the manager of Manchester United? It's such a tough thing to look back at, and it spurs so many questions in the head when you think about it. And again, I said this on the show yesterday, think about it in hindsight as well. I thought United could win the league this year looking at that team. I genuinely thought it. I thought maybe that's because I'm a fan and I'm involved.
No, I think you're right, but I think when they made those 3 signings, Varane, Ronaldo, and Sancho. I thought, they could be title challengers. I didn't think they could win the title, but I thought they finished fourth. I thought they finished fourth, but not 30 points back. I thought they finished fourth, maybe 7 points back. So they were always looking. So you had Liverpool, City, and Chelsea looking over the shoulders at them. Now, but you need a telescope to see the difference.
In my head, and that's it, in my head now. I'm looking at it, I'm going, I thought that. I believed that. Maybe that's what hurts the most today. I believed that. But I looked at the team sheet and I ignored what's on the bench, who's managing the club, maybe even the coaching staff, you could say, even a setup at the very top, even the corners cut when it comes to a director of football and bits and pieces like that by the club. What in my right mind, knowing football as I do, makes me think that the guy who managed Mulder and Cardiff could take this United team and win the Premier League. And I think that's the issue for all fans. We do get caught up in a fairy tale. And again, that doesn't mean I'm Ollie out and I want to disrespect Ollie. Ultimately, we said it last year at points, said it the season before at points. He's all right as a rebuilding gap. But like you said, how long do you rebuild for? How long do you build for until it becomes a slow builder, not getting his job done in time and being overcompensated for the work he's doing? And that's my issue now at the moment is we've seen enough to make a judgment that United aren't going to win a league this season. And we've seen enough to make a judgment that, and James Rees said this brilliantly last night, there's definitely three better teams in English football that can win the FA Cup. He's no longer in the Carabao Cup. There's a whole handful of better teams, 2 handful of better teams in Europe who could win the Champions League or, God forbid, the Europa League if we drop into that. So where's the trophy coming from this season?
But you're struggling.
Now's the time you rescue the season. Now's the time you rescue the season.
The fact you've been, you were so lucky to beat Villarreal in that game. You struggled to beat a second string Atalanta, who when Dembele went off, as I said, there were 6 players down from their first choice team. It's the fact that you're consistently awful now. That's the main thing. This is the worst. It's strange to say, isn't it? It's the best squad you've had, but performance-wise, this is the worst it's been.
Oh, yeah. We hit rock bottom. At the start of the season, Graeme, at the start of the season, it felt like it's the best it's been since Fergie. And maybe even a few seasons before Fergie retired.
But you were right. This is your best squad. And I tweeted the Newcastle game. That was the best starting 11 that United had put out since Fergie. Mm-hmm. And it was.
And yesterday, it felt like it hit the lowest that we've hit, which is mad to say it like that.
And it's the crazy thing. But you can't sign any players now. So what's the one thing you can change to improve performances? And that's the nitty gritty of it, isn't it? What one thing can the Glazers do now to improve their performances? And we're in October now, Ben. If Conte comes in, you could still win the title. You could.
That's what I mean in terms of
I haven't looked at the odds. I haven't looked at the odds today, but I presume you're 33-50 to 1 to win the title. Probably you were 28 before that game, so you're between 33 and 55 to win the title to 1. And it's October. Manchester United over 30 to 1 to win the title in October. That sums up where you are.
If we sack Ollie tomorrow and bring in Conte, you putting a big bet on United winning the league, Graeme?
I'd put a big bet on you finishing top 4.
Slightly different. You don't win a trophy for that.
This City team are playing. City are improving. I think the other fans would be worried, and that's when you beat Atalanta, Ben. I thought what summed it up. Where I was on social media that night, I saw more happy Liverpool and Chelsea fans and City fans tweeting about Ronaldo's header, how pleased they were because that kept Ollie in place for a while, and it was weird. It was. They were cheering United scoring that because they knew that kept Ollie around. And again, that sums it up. You don't. And look at Liverpool fans singing yesterday. We've got Ollie at the wheel. It's bordering on embarrassing now.
Yeah, I agree. And that's my issue with that yesterday. You can't get over that. I said this the other day. That hurt so much that sticking a plaster over it doesn't do any justice to it. Like ultimately a big decision has to be taken, and I think it costs him his job. It has to cost him his job. That can't happen at Old Trafford against Liverpool as United, no matter the form. Like something has to change, something has to give. And even if he makes 11 changes against Tottenham, it still isn't a big enough statement for me.
The thing is though, Ben, I know it was a hammering, it was disappointing. Hand on heart, was I surprised to put 5 past you? I wasn't. No, I wasn't surprised. I didn't think they would. But as I said 3 or 4-0 on my prediction. So I'm not Nostradamus, but the fact they've given you a good beating is not in any way surprising.
Let me just quickly recap what we've spoken about then, Graham. We've gone over all the teams, which is great in the games, and we've spoken obviously about the game at Old Trafford. If you want to rewind and watch that, please do. Hit a like on the video, subscribe to the channel as well. We're going to be all over what happens over the next few days, the next few weeks, and obviously ultimately we'll be here supporting United through thick and thin. I just to recap, you spoke to a source this morning that felt like Spurs was always going to be the barometer of where Ollie's at, where United are at. And ultimately, at this moment in time, he's going to be in charge for that. However, of course, we have seen, and you've heard during the show, and things are always moving. Obviously, United have executives. They have the Glazers in America. This is a moving wheel. Nothing is definite right now. And the caveat is that things could change in a couple of hours. We know Richard Arnold's potentially having a chat with the Glazers this afternoon. So who knows what that chat's about or what's going to be going down after that call. Also, on top of that, Conte's people are the people putting the feelers out about him potentially being interested in the United job. Of course, he wants it, but he'll want to do it his way. And of course, does that suit United? Who knows where the glove fits? Graham, what a show. What a show. Can we do this more often, by the way? It's good having you on the weekend review, chatting about all kinds of football and not just United.
Yeah, it'll be a bit boring when Ollie gets replaced by someone good, though, won't it? It'll just be.
Yeah, but only for you.
No, it'll be good. You need to do it. And the caveat I would say with that, Ben, is about Glazers. Remember, although he's had the utmost confidence amongst the hierarchy at United, there's always been that part of the hierarchy who were never convinced. It's a small number, but there was always that. This is the number who wanted him sacked last year. They wanted Pochettino. So there has always been that little chunk within the hierarchy, the powers that be, who have never been fans of Ollie. Obviously, they weren't making the decisions, but their voices might be a bit louder today.
It'd be interesting. We'll wait and see what happens. Graeme Bailey, thank you. Go and give Graham a follow on Twitter. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you guys for watching. 6 o'clock tonight, we're going to be joined by a Swansea fan channel and a Birmingham City fan channel as well, as we try and have a bit of a positive show amongst all the sadness and disgruntledness, because at the moment, Laird and Chong are setting the championship on fire. So we want to find out more about how those guys are getting on, and we're going to round up everything from academy, under 23, and our ladies out on international duty at 6 o'clock tonight in the Red Roundup. It's everything but the first team that we're chatting about from 6 o'clock this evening. So join Benny and Connor. For now, Graham, thank you again, mate. I'm going to get out of here. The weekend roundup will be back. It will be back on Monday at 1 o'clock. For now, I'll speak to you guys soon. Take it easy.